Have you ever felt like you are working more, but somehow you are not moving forward? You wake up early, you go to work, you stay longer than everyone else. You say yes to extra tasks, extra hours, extra pressure, and at the end of the month, you look at your bank account and nothing really changes. Maybe you even feel more tired than before, more stressed, more confused, because deep down, you believed something very simple. If I work harder, I will earn more. If I sacrifice more time, my life will improve. That belief feels logical. It feels fair. It feels like the way the world should work. But what if that belief is incomplete? What if working more is not the same as earning more? I didn't always question it. For a long time, I was proud of working overtime. It made me feel responsible, dedicated, valuable. When others left the office, I stayed. When others rested, I kept going. I thought this was the difference between people who succeed and people who don't. But slowly, something started to feel wrong. My time was disappearing, my energy was draining, but my income stayed almost the same. Sometimes it increased a little, but not in a way that changed my life, not in a way that matched the effort. And that's when a quiet question appeared. If I am giving more, why am I not receiving more? At first, I ignored it because it's uncomfortable, because it challenges everything I believed, because maybe the problem is not effort. Maybe the problem is something else, something we don't usually talk about, something hidden inside the way we work and the way we are paid. In this story, I want to share what really happened, what I discovered after working overtime every single day, and why. Even though I was working harder than ever, my money didn't grow. If you have ever felt stuck, even while trying your best, this story might feel very familiar. Let's begin. At first, I thought the problem was simple. Maybe I just needed more time, more effort, more consistency. So I pushed myself even harder. I started coming to work earlier, leaving later, skipping small breaks, even checking messages at night, just to make sure nothing was left unfinished. And for a while, it felt like I was doing the right thing. My manager noticed. Sometimes he would say, "You're very dedicated. You work harder than most people." Those words felt good. They made me believe I was on the right path. But when salary review time came, something didn't match. The increase was small, almost symbolic. It didn't reflect the extra hours, the extra energy, the extra stress I had been carrying, and that was confusing. Because I thought effort was supposed to lead to results. So I asked myself again, maybe I just need more patience? Maybe success takes time? So I continued, week after week, month after month. Overtime became normal, not something special, not something extra, just expected. And that's when I noticed something subtle. The more I worked, the more work I was given. Not higher level work, not more valuable tasks, just more tasks, more things to finish, more pressure to keep up. It was like running on a treadmill. No matter how fast I moved, I stayed in the same place, busy, but not progressing. And then one day, I looked around at my coworkers. Some of them left on time, some of them worked less than I did, but strangely, their situation didn't seem worse than mine. In fact, some of them seemed more relaxed, more balanced, even happier. That was the moment something shifted, because I realized working more hours does not automatically increase your value. It just increases your time spent. And time is not always the thing that companies pay more for. That idea stayed in my mind, quietly, growing. Because if time is not the answer, then what is? And why had I been focusing on the wrong thing? For so long, that question stayed with me. If working more hours is not the answer, then what actually creates more income? At first, I didn't have a clear answer, but I started observing more carefully. Not just my own work, but the way the company worked, the way decisions were made, the way people were valued, and slowly, I began to notice a pattern. There were people in the office who didn't work as many hours as I did. They didn't stay late every day. They didn't look exhausted, but somehow they earned more. And it didn't seem random. It wasn't luck. There was something different about what they were doing. So I paid closer attention, and I realized something important. They were not just doing tasks. They were solving problems. While I was focused on finishing my work, they were focused on improving the system. making things faster, simpler, more efficient, and that difference changed everything. Because tasks can be repeated, anyone can be trained to do them. But solving problems requires thinking, understanding, creativity, and those things are harder to replace, harder to ignore. I also noticed another difference. They communicated more, they shared ideas, they asked questions, they made their work visible, while I stayed quiet, hoping my effort would speak for itself. But effort is not always visible. And if people don't see your value, they don't reward it. That realization was uncomfortable because it meant the system was not unfair. I was just playing the wrong game. I believed that working harder was enough. But in reality, working smarter and working on the right things matters much more. And maybe the hardest part to accept was this. I had been trading time for a fixed reward. No matter how much more time I gave, the reward didn't change significantly because the structure was not designed that way. And once I saw that clearly, I couldn't unsee it. Because now the question was no longer, how can I work more? But instead, how can I become more valuable? And that question changed the direction of everything. Once I started asking a different question, everything began to look different. Not immediately, not dramatically, but slowly. My perspective changed. Instead of focusing on how many hours I worked, I started paying attention to what kind of work I was doing. Was it something anyone could do with a bit of training? Or was it something that required deeper thinking, decision-making, responsibility? That distinction became very important because I realized something simple, but powerful. Not all work is valued equally. Two people can work the same number of hours, but create very different levels of impact. And companies don't really pay for time. They pay for impact. They pay for results. They pay for problems solved. That idea changed how I approached my day. I stopped saying yes to everything, not because I wanted to do less, but because I wanted to do better. I began to choose tasks more carefully, to focus on things that actually mattered, things that affected outcomes, things that people noticed. At first, it felt uncomfortable because I was used to being busy all the time, used to feeling tired, as proof that I was working hard. But now, I had to think more, slow down, ask questions, understand the bigger picture. And something interesting happened. I started learning faster. Not just how to do tasks, but why those tasks existed, how they connected, how they could be improved. And when you understand that, you are no longer just a worker. You become someone who adds value, someone who can make things better. At the same time, I also began to speak up more, sharing ideas, giving suggestions, even small ones. At first, I was afraid of being wrong, afraid of being judged. But I realized staying silent didn't help me grow either. And slowly, people started to notice, not because I worked longer hours, but because I was thinking differently, contributing differently. And for the first time, I felt something change. Not in my salary yet, but in my direction. Because now, I was no longer stuck in the same place. I was moving, maybe slowly, but in a completely new way. Looking back now, I can see it clearly. The problem was never just about working hard. It was about working in a way that could actually change something. For a long time, I believed that effort alone was enough. That if I kept pushing, kept sacrificing time, kept saying yes to everything, my life would eventually improve. But that belief kept me busy, not progressing. Because effort without direction can easily become a habit, a routine, something that feels productive, but doesn't really move you forward. What truly changed for me was not a sudden opportunity, not a big promotion, not a dramatic moment. It was a shift in thinking from how much can I do to what actually matters, from how long can I work to what creates real value. And once that shift happened, everything else started to follow. I became more selective, more intentional, more aware of where my time was going. Because time is not just something you spend, it's something you invest. And not every investment brings a return. That was the hardest truth to accept, but also the most important, because now I no longer measure my days by how tired I feel or how many hours I worked. I measure them by impact, by learning, by progress, even small progress, and slowly. That began to reflect in my life, not instantly, but steadily. And maybe that's the message I want to leave with you. If you feel like you are working more, but your money is not growing, pause for a moment, not to stop trying, but to look more carefully, because the answer may not be to do more, but to do differently. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this story. If this made you think in a new way, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And if you've ever felt stuck despite working hard, share your experience in the comments, because sometimes the most valuable insights come from real stories like yours.